Well, many of you probably can remember, I believe it's at the end of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, where Paul says, now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. The greatest is love. And so we talked last week about faith, and so today we're going to talk a little bit about hope. And I know I've preached about hope before. Hope is this certainty that something will come to pass. You may not know when, but you know that it's coming. But hope deferred makes a heart sick. Hope deferred. What does that mean? Well, if hope is an absolute certainty that something is going to pass, something is going to happen, deferred hope would be a hope where you have to keep waiting. And it gets exhausting. Now, of course, we all have a hope deferred. If we are followers of Jesus, the main hope, the primary hope that we have that is deferred is that one day, fully and completely, God's kingdom will be realized on this earth. That hope is deferred. And so to some extent it makes our heart sick, doesn't it? You look around the world at the way things are, and you go, oh, how this makes my heart hurt. And yet there's other hopes in our lives that are also deferred. They are also related to our role in the kingdom, right? Maybe you've been walking with the Lord and have asked Him what His calling for you is. And of course, part of our calling is just to follow Jesus. And so as we follow Jesus, we end up in some places that maybe we never imagined ourselves being, right? Here we are, sheep following a shepherd, and He's leading us through some sketchy areas where we're going, Lord, what are you doing? Like, if you'd told me the end destination, I probably could have used Google Maps and we would have gotten out of this a little bit easier, right? Have you ever had that feeling? I've had it a few times in my life. And so, as we go along in those moments, you go, God, what are you doing? There's a reason He's God and you're not. He knows what His plan for you is, and He's bringing you through those times, those difficulties, for a reason. I don't think that God does anything arbitrarily. I don't think that He lets you go through things for absolutely no reason. Indeed, Paul tells us to endure hardships as discipline, because our Father is training us to be in a specific role in His kingdom. And so we have to go through those painful times sometimes. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. Putting off hope can literally make you feel sick. But a longing fulfilled is like a tree of life. Now, of course, this would be referring to the tree of life, the original tree of life in the Garden of Eden. That tree of life, if they had eaten from it, it would have been eternal life. God removed them from the garden after they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil for a reason. Can you imagine knowing the difference between good and evil, knowing that you fall on the side of evil, and then having to live for eternity with that? That would be terrible. That would not be a good place to be. So God mercifully removed them from the garden so that they wouldn't be tempted to eat from the tree of eternal life. But a longing fulfilled is like a tree of life. Have you ever had something that you had been hoping for, that you had been longing for, finally come to pass? Did it give you great relief? I don't know. It depends on what you were hoping for. I know of people who, I have read anecdotally of people who had been longing to become millionaires or billionaires, and when they get there, they want just a little bit more. It wasn't a relief for them, because all of a sudden it had things tied to it that were painful, right? So that's probably not something that we ought to be hoping or longing for. But there are other things that we hope or long for as parents, of course. Maybe as grandparents, I can't speak from that because I'm not a grandparent, but I am a parent, and I can tell you that I have hopes for my children. I don't know what God has called them to do in their lives. I know that depending on the day, one of them wants to be a firefighter, and then a farmer, and then a pastor. And he's raising his hand right now. And it depends on the day. It depends on what's going on in that moment, right? And so I don't know what to hope for him other than he will honor God with his life. And I can guarantee you that there was a time in my life when I was running from God that my grandparents and my mom had hopes for me that they were seeing unfulfilled. The very first time that my mom saw me preach, she came up in tears afterwards and was like, "This is what I've been hoping for you. And I finally see it fulfilled." It was like a tree of life for her. It gave her refreshment. It gave her encouragement. It gave her nourishment. And the same with my grandma. She has told me on many occasions that she watches these things that I put on YouTube, that she watches my sermons. It is a longing fulfilled. They get to see me where they've always been praying that I would be. I wish they would stop it. Because I don't want to be up here. I was saying in Sunday school, I'd rather have a behind-the-scenes role in the kingdom. I don't want to be up here preaching. But for this season of my life, this is what God has for me. And so I'm going to take it in stride. And He's going to give me what I need. Right? I've told you before that I have a sign above the door in my bedroom, and it's a good reminder for me. I don't know who came up with this saying. I've searched on the internet and can't figure it out, can't find it. But it says that hope is the ability to hear the music of the future today. And faith is the courage to dance to it today. So if hope is the ability to hear the music of the future, I want to ask you this, and you can say out loud if you'd like to, you don't have to. I want you to consider this in your own life. What are you hoping for? Aside from eternity, obviously we're all hoping and longing for the day when we get to spend eternity with our King. It's going to be amazing, right? What else are you hoping for? What else are you longing for? What are the God-given longings that you have? There have been times in my life where I was hoping for something, and we did eventually get there, but it was through a path that I never would have chosen myself. I alluded to that earlier. That's the difficulty with being the sheep and not the shepherd, right? Because I can't tell you the number of times when I've said to God, "You know, God, this is not the way I would have chosen." And He says, "Yeah, I know. You're not the shepherd." I know, but couldn't you have spared me from X, from Y, from Z? He said, "I could have spared you from those things, but you would not be the person you are today." See, there's a trap in the question. You've all probably heard the question, if you could go back in time and change one thing, any point in your life, what would you go back and change? And the moment I asked that question, everyone had something come to mind, probably. I had several things come to mind. But God reminds me that that is a trap, because first of all, you can't. You cannot go back and change the past. The past is the past. Leave it there. I've been through hell in my life, guys. Some of it was self-induced. There are a lot of things that I wish I could go back and change, or that at one point I wished I could go back and change. That's not how it works. And we can get trapped in this cycle of thinking, you know, if only that had turned out differently, my life would be better somehow. But would it? I look back at my life and I see what I was put through as a child. I see what I willingly walked through as a young adult that I chose. There's a good thing he's the shepherd, y'all. Because those things that I chose drug me through hell. But I can tell you this. If I went back to change anything, I would not be the man I am today. I would probably not be standing here today. I would probably not be married with 4 kids today. And I got to tell you guys, I'm blessed. The path that I took to get to where I am was not a pleasant one. It was full of pain. It was full of things I'd have rather not done. I'd have rather not gone through. Had I seen beforehand what it was going to cause, I would have chosen a different path. But I wouldn't be the man I am today. There are things that I hope for in my own life. I've made no secret to you that it is ultimately my desire to one day open a retreat center for pastors. I don't know when that's going to happen, but it's one of the hopes that I have that I'm pretty positive God has called me to. I mean, that or I'm coming up with a really big delusion for myself. I don't know when it's going to happen, and I don't know the path that it's going to take to get there. But I know this. In the meantime, I need to be doing my work. I need to be doing my part, right? And part of that part is ministry in a local church context like I am right now. And I thank the Lord for it. And I thank the Lord that I get to be here as your pastor. And I don't know how much longer God has that planned for. But for as long as He has me here, I'll stay. But that's not going to stop me from researching what's it going to take to open a retreat center, right? There are certain steps that have to be taken in order for that to become a reality. What about you? What hopes do you have? What role do you see your King giving you in the kingdom? Are you taking steps to get there? Are you walking in faith? What hopes do you have, and how are you walking towards it in faith? We all have those things that we have to be considering. Maybe your hope is that you hope to remain in Jewell County or wherever you happen to be living until the Lord calls you home. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. What are you called to do in the meantime? Do that thing. If you draw breath, you have a purpose. You have a reason for being here. Are you fulfilling your calling? Your twofold calling. 1, following Jesus. 2, into whatever paths He's taking you. If I could have chosen, what year is this, 2020? If I could have chosen a different path 10 years ago that didn't involve me standing up here preaching on a given Sunday, I probably would have taken the other path. Because I know that there are people that enjoy hearing their own voice and letting others hear their voice. I am not that person. I would really rather not be up here. But I am. It's part of the path that God has called me down. What are you doing that maybe you'd rather not be doing that is still part of your calling? God is going to take you through places that probably you'd rather not be. But He's going to use it to minister to others.